Okay, we have another weekly update of rental house versus high income ETFs. So I'll give an update here as far as what I've been up to. I was traveling around Europe for about almost 4 weeks on bicycle through Switzerland, Germany, Austria, and France. So 4 countries. Rode several hundred kilometers along couple of bike routes, the Eurovelo 6 and the Eurovelo 5 around Lake Constance and up the Rhine River. So that's what you get to do when you retire and invest in high income ETF. This ETF and this project that I'm doing is a small portion of my overall portfolio. I don't share everything on the internet. I'm not quite that comfortable doing it yet. So this is just a part of it. This money is from one of the rental houses we sold, and we sold other rental houses previous to this that we invested in some high income ETFs, which is doing very well. And I came up with the idea that high income covered call ETFs will outperform the rental houses by a substantial amount without the headaches. People see you get tax breaks with rental property, but would you rather make 100,000 a year with dividends and distributions, or 50,000 a year with some tax breaks? It depends on the total amount of money you stick in your pocket after taxes. By using cover calls that use return of capital, you can kick that tax bill down the road and have it show up later as long-term capital gains. I don't give tax advice or financial advice, but there's a lot of YouTube channels out there that explain how that works. Or you can use Chat GPT to ask what return of capital is and how it works and all that good stuff. So that's enough about that. Let's get going here. If you have not subscribed, I'd love it if you would subscribe. I want to make doing these videos worth my time. It takes about an hour a week, which isn't a lot, but if I know people are watching it and getting some good entertainment value out of it, that'd be nice to know. Even during the down times, I get some comments, people almost cheering me on that I'm losing money. I think they're rooting for me to lose money, but then there's people who are rooting for me to make money because they're doing the same things I do. And so if I'm making money, they're probably making money. So subscribe if you haven't done so. I'd appreciate it. This is where we're at. So this is the first accurate update I've given in a few weeks because I've been gone and haven't had access to my computer to create these videos the way I want to. So my equity, I'm sitting at 85,808 approximately. I'm using 74,822 in margin. That is slowly going down because I haven't been buying any more shares of stock as of late. If you're wondering exactly what cover calls I'm investing in, let's start here at the bottom. I'll give a little bit more extended update than I usually do because this is the first video I've made in about a month. So I started out mostly with QDTE. I ended up with 2,700 shares. My average cost is 41.59. Right now it's 35.30. And you think, oh my gosh, this guy's lost almost $17,000. Yes, the NAV has gone down, but the distributions has made the overall return pretty decent. So you got to look at the total return, not just this chart here. And we'll look at that in a few minutes. And then I start investing in AIPI, which pays a distribution of about 35% or 34, about that range. My average cost is 48. Right now it's 42. Same thing. My net asset value is down a 4,000, but the overall return is doing somewhat well. I start buying GIAX. I end up with 500 shares of that. My average cost is 1637. You see it's right now it's 1772, so I'm up. The NAV is up on that. Plus, this is returning 24% annually, so about 2% per month, which is nice. I started buying some SPYI, some QQQI, and lately I've been adding MAGY. It's a round hill weekly cover call fund that pays close to 35%. I currently have 100 shares of that. My average cost is 56.20. It's currently at 57.17, so I'm up on that. My NAB plus it's returning the nearly 35%. So you got to look at the overall total return, and I keep track of how QDTE is doing. Some people say, why don't you sell that and invest the money in something else? It's still earning about 35%. And my thought process is, would I do better selling this and buying something else? Or has this kind of reached its bottom and the NAV is slowly going to grow over time? And I don't know if I get back to the original 41.59 or not. I'm happy just leaving it. We'll talk more about that in a second. Like I said, I've been gone for several weeks. Last time I bought something was MAGY. I bought 50 shares back on 8/20 for a price of 55.43. This shows everything that I've purchased since I started this experiment. Here's some of the recent activity. On September 12th, I got a distribution from QDTE, 541, which is a little bit lower than the average. The average is around 600. A week before that, I got 772. So it's averaging about 650 a week. Typically, it pays right about 650 to 680 a week, but for some reason, it went to 772, then it went to 541. And the distribution before that was around $550. I'm okay with it. And then MAGY is a weekly payer at 100 shares is giving me $37 a week. On September 2nd, it gave me 38. And that margin interest is costing me about a little bit less than 6% per year. And that is costing me about $343 a month. But just take note that I have about $74,000 in margin. And on that $74,000 in margin, I'm earning probably around $15,000 to $18,000 per year. And it's costing me about $4,000 per year. So I'm making about $10,000 a year on that margin after I pay the interest. So I think about it borrowing money for a rental property. You invest in rental property, collect rent, and you hope for positive cash flow. That margin is the same thing in my eyes. I'm borrowing money, earning distributions, paying the interest, and I have a positive cash flow of about $10,000 per year. That's the way I look at it. Other people might look at it differently, but that's okay. We can all have different opinions. And it seems to be working for me. So let's go back to the distributions. I was running out of space a little bit. And in order to show the weekly and monthly distributions, I had to hide overall distributions. But down here is the total distributions I've earned since November 1st of 2024. And today is about September 15th, 2025. So in the month of August, you can see all the distributions I earned. It was a pretty good month because there were actually 5 Fridays. So QDTE pays every Friday. So had a little bit of a boost of a distribution month. These are the distributions I still have coming for the month. I should end up between 3,500 and 4,000 for this month. A little bit less probably than August because, like I said, there were 5 Fridays, so I had an extra distribution. So I had an extra distribution of QDTE. This screenshot shows my Excel sheet of how I projected things would happen at the beginning of this project. I created a spreadsheet with the idea that I would invest 70,000. I'd borrow about 52,000, which represents about 75% of my equity. So this column here is 75% of this column. And I expected it to grow about 0.75% per week, which some people think is a little bit crazy, but hey, you got to have some type of goal, right? If things were going as projected as of last Friday, I should have been about 98,000 in equity using 73,000 in margin for a total invested of 172,500 and some. And that would have been a total gain for the year since the beginning of this project of about 40 to 41%. But here's how things are actually happening. I'm at 85,000, which is 13,000 less than what I projected. And my margin is 74,822, which is close to what I would expect it to have been using if things would have went as projected. I got a total invested of 160,000. So that's the equity plus the margin. This past week, I'm up 2.16%, which is actually pretty good considering I was expecting 0.75% each week. You can see the weekly returns goes up and then have a 4% drop, then up 5%, up less than 1%, and you can see how that's all rolling along. So my total gain, 22.59%. So actually, if I would have projected, perhaps this would grow at half of 1% per week. That'd probably be about what my goal would be. So I'm using 87% margin compared to my equity. This is not margin maintenance or how much margin I can actually use. I still have probably about $40,000 to $50,000 of buying power in margin, but this is my own self policing of keeping this margin amount to a certain amount. So I am using more percent wise than what I had planned, but I'm using about the amount that I would expect it to have been using if my equity was higher. So I'll probably keep this column here how I project it, unless the equity and the market takes a huge nosedive, then I'll quit buying shares for a while. Or perhaps I'll buy more shares if the price is low. It just depends. So the blue line will represent a 1 year anniversary when I started this. And I was hoping to be at 100,000 after 1 year. The green line represents the end of the year, which I'd be at 110,000. So if I'm up to about 100,000 at the end of the year, I would be totally thrilled and happy. Even 22% for 1 year is awesome. If I could do that every year, things would be great. This whole project had to do with comparing how those covered calls would do versus the rental house if I would have kept it. This is projected if I would have kept that house, how things might have went. So this is a perfect world where I have no expenses for maintenance except for insurance and taxes. So each month I would collect $700. I would pay 80 in insurance, 200 in taxes. And this is the running balance of my positive cash flow and my imaginary checking account. This column is how the equity would grow, assuming that the equity would grow at 4% per year. So this percent per month, which is equal to $233. I just took it and divided that over a year. The month, I'm not really compounding that. The equity, and this is the equity plus the cash, these two columns here. So my house would be sitting at about 77,183. If I were to sell that, yes, I know there's real estate commission, there's closing costs, there's all types of cool things if I sold it. Also, I know there's maintenance costs. I got people saying, hey, you got maintenance costs. They must not watch the video till the end because I talk about that usually. At the end of the year, I'll make a video, kind of like a end of year video. And what I'll do is go back and look at my average costs for the past 3 or 4 years and put the average of those maintenance costs items in here just to compare things, how things would have probably have went. So anyhow, year to date, my house would be sitting at 77,183. The ETF would be 85,811 approximately. So total to date, my ETF would be up $8,628, which I consider a total win. So once again, if you enjoyed this, click the like and subscribe and all those things, and I will give you another update next week.